Hi guys, good morning. So before we get started, I want to go ahead and apologize for something just in case it happens. Um, we're working from home for the next 2 weeks, so in the next few videos, if you hear any noises that aren't noises you would normally hear, or if anything sounds different, or if my video won't work, I apologize. The software I use to edit my videos and to have the split screen thing where you can see me on one side of the screen and you can see our slides on the other side of the screen is online, and my technology at home is not as good as it is at school because I don't have very good Wi-Fi. I also live close to an airport, and I live next to a very busy street. So if you hear a lot of noises, I'm sorry. I'm hoping that maybe it'll be kind of quiet, but we'll see. So now that I've explained, in case you hear an airplane or something and I don't manage to mute it in time, let's go ahead and get started talking about ancient Greece. So last week I had you read, not last week, on Monday I had you read a section about the Minoans. And so you have a little bit of an introduction to ancient Greece already. So we're going to be talking about ancient Greece from 3000 BC to about 1 AD. So the country of Greece is made up of peninsulas that are close together. So even today, Greece is this green part, and it's broken up into these little peninsulas and islands. So historically, this made it hard for people to connect and to trade their cultures and ideas with each other, because they didn't have the same technology we have today, and it was a little bit harder to get from one place to another. So in case you don't know what a peninsula is a mass of land that projects out and is surrounded by water on 3 sides. So there are several peninsulas that come off of Puerto. There are several places where you can see pieces of land that stick out and are surrounded by water on 3 different sides. So the early history of Greece. This is what you already know a little bit about. The Minoans were traders who lived on the island of Crete from 3000 to about 1100 BC. Now those dates might be a little bit different than what they are in what we read the other day, but that's just because in early history, sometimes it's hard for us to tell what day things are, what day and what year things are. When we get to Rome, we'll talk about that a little bit more, but it's because they measured days and years differently than we do. So sometimes it's hard for us to be 100% sure. So Minoan civilization declined around 1400 BC when the Mycenaeans took over. So we're not going to learn a lot about the Minoans because that's what you did on Monday. The Mycenaeans lived on the mainland of Greece in their city of Mycenae. So they came from Mycenae to where the Minoans were staying on Crete to kind of take over and to take land and resources from them. So something we know about both cultures is that they used writing. They used some of the earliest Greek writing that we've ever found. We can't read the Minoan writings, but we can read the Mycenaean ones. So they're early forms of what Greek is today. So the next thing we're going to talk about is the Trojan War. The Trojan War is something that you've probably heard of, even if you don't know that you've heard of it. We think that it happened around 1194 to 1184 BC. The Trojan War was a war that was fought over the city of Troy. So we don't know much about this event because historians argue over if it was real or if it was several events that got put together as one event when they wrote it down. So before this time period, a lot of times how information was given was orally. They would tell a story, and through telling that story, They would pass down information. So sometimes we're not sure if something is a story and it's kind of several real things that were put together to make a good story that's based on the truth, or if it's actually what happened. So the Trojan War marks the beginning of the Dark Ages in Greece, which is from the 1100s to about 750 BC. So Dark Ages is a word that you're going to hear again when we talk about Europe. The Dark Ages are times when we can find no written history for a civilization, so we don't really know what happens. A lot of people assume that Dark Ages mean that people aren't as educated then, but it really doesn't. It just means that things were disorganized for some reason, usually because there was sickness or poverty or a lot of wars happening, and so the things that they wrote down were just lost, or they weren't writing a lot of things down. So to jump back a little bit, I want to show you some pictures of the Trojan War, because we don't know everything about it, because we're not sure if it's real or not, but we do know that a few things absolutely happened. So we know that there was a war over the city of Troy, because there are paintings of it. This is a recreation of pottery showing two people fighting. I believe that this is Achilles and Agamemnon. I could be wrong though. They're characters from a story that a man named Homer wrote down. So Homer was a person who told stories for a living. Like I told you earlier how they passed down stories orally, people just told stories. Homer was somebody who told stories for a living. And he has the most famous telling of the Battle of Troy in his story, the Iliad. He also has another one called the Odyssey that tells us a lot more about Greek history. They're very good stories. They've been made into a lot of different movies, but they're based on true things. So these are also some uniforms that people would wear. This is what we think the fighters probably would have looked like based on things we found. We know they were using bronze, so they probably had bronze swords, and they probably had big bronze shields. And we know for sure that these round shields were super popular because they would use them to put together to form a big, kind of like a canopy over them. I know you've seen it happen in movies. They do it in the movie Gladiator, and they also do it in the new Mulan movie. Maybe I'll try and find a clip of it to link so that you can look at it and see it happening. We also have this picture of a giant horse. So during the Battle of Troy, we think that the Trojans used this big horse to trick the people of Troy. So they gave this to them as like a gift to be like, hey, we're sorry, we don't want to fight anymore. Will you please forgive us? And the people of the town of Troy, the city of Troy, accepted it and took it into their city. But what they didn't know was that the horse was full of soldiers. And so in the middle of the night, the soldiers came out and started attacking. So there are a lot of recreations of this, and it's been in a ton of movies because it's a really interesting idea to think about people hiding in a giant wooden horse. So the next thing we're going to talk about are city-states. This is a super common thing that we see in Greece. City-states are these places that are connected and unified, and they're kind of like a kingdom, but they're smaller. So around 800 BC, city-states began to form and written records were kept again. So the Dark Ages ended. City-states were ruled by aristocrats. Remember, we learned about those, I believe, last week. They're just rich people who are important. Or by military leaders. They came up with a system of government called a democracy where the citizens govern themselves instead of having one ruler make all the decisions. We'll talk more about democracies later, That's a word that's probably familiar to you because a lot of countries today use democratic governments. But this democracy was a little bit different than the one we know about. So we're going to have a separate lesson about it. So our last slide for today is the Golden Age. Around 700 BC, a city-state called Athens had grown to be really important. Athens is a word that you've probably heard before because it's the most famous city-state. Again, something we'll talk about more later. So their leader reformed their economy and their government in 594 BC. He did a lot of things, and three of the biggest things were he freed slaves, he canceled all debt, and he expanded trade. So this was really good for the people who lived there. So between 479 and 431 BC, Greece got rich from all of this new trade and having their economy kind of restarted and being able to rebuild itself and make itself better. Because they got rich, they had time to develop their philosophy, their religion, their art, and their architecture. So those are the things we're going to be talking about a lot more in the next few days. We're going to be learning about each of these things and kind of what that means for Greece. So you've got 3 questions for your homework. Pretty easy. Most of them are your opinion. So the first one is, why do you think Greece developed slowly and had such a long dark age? Number 2, do you think we can learn anything from the ancient Greeks? So there's no right or wrong on this question. It's just your opinion. I want to know what you think. And number 3, what do you think will be the most interesting topic to learn about in our next few lessons? So number 3 is talking about down here, where we're talking about developing their philosophy, religion, art, and architecture. All right, so answer those 3 questions and send them to me. And that's all you've got to do for today. If you have any questions about what we learned about, or even just anything you're curious about, send me a private message, let me know. I'll be happy to answer any of your questions. I hope that you guys have a good day and that this video was okay quality. Thank you guys for being patient with me. I hope you have a great day.